welcome to the podcast, Meaghan. I'm so excited to speak with you. I know that we've been trying to set this up for a while now, but we finally got this set up and I am busting to speak with you. And I know a lot of my listeners can't wait to hear all about your strategies and your methods, which are quite amazing. The transformations you get women are mind-blowing. So welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, Tara. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Why don't we start by you telling the listeners a little bit about your story and how you came. I know that you had a little bit of a transformation. And so why don't we start there?
Yes, totally. So I was somebody who used to never work out at all, thought that I did not like working out, like thought exercise was boring and, oh, it's so hard, I don't like it. And then when I was about 23, I think I'm just turned 32. So this has been a bit of a journey, but I was around 23 when I was really kind of starting to gain a little bit more body fat for the first time in my life. And I mean, it made sense because I just was drinking a lot of beers, doing like whatever I wanted. But it was really the first time in my life I started to feel very unconfident in my body because it was changing quite quickly. So I was like, all right, I got to start doing something. So that's how I just started like exercising at all. And I would just do Jillian Michaels videos. So kind of very HIIT body weight stuff at home. And I dropped weight pretty quickly, which I was happy about. But I remember being like, okay, I'm smaller, but how do we get these really like tone defined legs? And how do I get these nice glutes? I remember really thinking about that a lot. So just kind of bit by bit, I slowly started to realize like, okay, there must be a reason people go to an actual gym and use that equipment. So I went to a real gym and was just as scared as any other woman who starts off in the gym. And like, I totally can relate to that, the intimidation, because I was that. I was so afraid to use like the bigger stuff. But I was just kind of going through bodybuilding.com and I started to just come across books from people that were very explicit about like, this is how to build a toned ideal feminine body. And what I learned was that it literally was nothing more than putting muscle on your body and then taking body fat off, and that it really didn't have to do anything with your weight. It was instead body composition. So literally, what's your body composed of, how much muscle and fat, and that to get that ideal look, you had to lift, relatively challenging weights. And that didn't mean doing very long workouts, but really doing good quality exercises and making it count. And this was also my first introduction to macros, which was also mind-blowing to me to realize like, there was no such thing as this food is bad and this food is good. I mean, obviously within reason, but it was more about the quantity that you were having and whether or not it was enough for your body to actually gain muscle, lose fat with. So I started just following the steps in these books. And yeah, I was afraid to go on like the squat rack and use the barbell and everything, but I was like, okay, just do it. And of course, the first time was the scariest. And then after that, it was fine. And so just following those steps from educating myself, I started to get a really big transformation really quickly. And I just became, somebody who had been very afraid of the gym, would like talk myself out of even going in there, to being like absolutely addicted, wanting to go every single day, or at least almost every single day, like loving it, because I started to see my body change so fast. I started to have way more like firm, tight, smooth definition everywhere, doing much shorter workouts than I had for like the months previous to that, where I was just being really random because I didn't know what to do. So a couple years kind of go by like this, where I'm just kind of doing it all on my own. And at some point I decide to make an online fitness coaching business. So I started literally day one, was late 2018. And started working with a bunch of women and was getting everybody really good results. And I still was fit, I had great abs, I was lean, but at some point I started to realize like I still just really didn't have as much muscle definition as I wanted, especially in my lower body. Didn't have like really defined legs, and always wondered like, why won't my glutes get any bigger? And so about a little over a year and a half ago, I finally caved and decided like, okay, I'm going to get my own coach, even though I am a coach, but actually work with somebody who knows more than I do, because I just had to accept clearly I've hit the limit of my knowledge. And that's when I hired my coach. And in the last year and a half, like the results I've gotten are just insane. And I've learned so much. And this is obviously why now I'm a really big fan of coaching, just because I know from my own personal story, you know, like you can obviously learn quite a bit on your own just by educating yourself with everything that's out there, books, podcasts, YouTube, all the content I put out can really help you. But it really makes a difference when you are working with somebody who's keeping their eyes on every single step of your progress, can give you really detailed, really custom feedback. And that's just when your results accelerate like crazy. And also just the fact that you take it as seriously as you need to when you want a great physique. And that doesn't mean that you don't ever get to do anything fun. You do, but you know, because when you're doing it by yourself, it's kind of easy to like be like, oh, I sort of did it, versus when you have a coach, like you have to be like, no, I actually did the thing. And so now I'm just super passionate about showing women that, because really I already was talking about eat more, work out less, because of course we've been so brainwashed our whole lives to think like, oh, you want to lose weight, just eat less and move more. Like I still see that, you
Oh
know,
yeah,
all over the
everywhere.
place, and it's
Mhm.
so mad when I read that. Just
Yeah.
sometimes in like a book randomly that is not about fitness, and they'll say like, oh yeah, if you want to lose weight, you just eat less, move more. I'm like, oh my
What all my
gosh, that's
friends
so
think.
not
All
true.
my friends think that that's the case, right?
Yeah.
That's the case. I have a girlfriend, she's doing light and easy. I had another girlfriend do the HCG diet, right? And I'm watching these women thinking, not only are you causing issues, obviously, I am all for having a smoking hot body, but also obviously my focus is health, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I'm thinking, what are you doing to your health? But the problem is they swing. It's not like they've done it and it's stayed that way. Or to be fair, one of my friends who's doing light and easy, she's lost a fair bit of weight. It remains to be seen. She'll keep it off. But I know I watch other friends and also clients, right, who do this whole I've got to eat less and work out like a maniac. But it doesn't
Mhm.
work. It's not working.
No,
And
it
ultimately, they're
definitely,
not getting those results and they're not sustainable. And it's not
yeah,
fun.
yeah, definitely not fun. It's miserable, and absolutely, it's tanking your internal health,
Yeah.
tanking your hormones, way slowing down your metabolism,
Mhm.
and yeah, just that you will yo-yo because
Talk
you're
about
not, you're not actually doing any favors for your body, and even then. And this was such a big realization for me, like I said, since getting my own coach this last year and a half. And, you know, I put my before and after pictures all the time on social media.
they're
And like,
impressive.
yeah. And what's crazy is, you know, about a year and a half ago, I weigh the same as I do now. But if you look at my before, you know, I was kind of skinny fat relatively, you know,
Yes.
I was
Oh,
small.
absolutely.
Yeah, but I was not really like shapely, versus now I weigh the same, but I finally look like somebody who works out, right? Like, I actually have shape to my body. So, and the difference is now I eat more than I ever have ever. Like I eat intentionally such a high amount of food. I joke about this on social media that I eat two
Yeah.
bagels a day
Yeah.
because I need to eat so many carbs for all the muscle gain that I'm doing. And I work out the least I ever have. So I still put a lot of effort into my workouts. You know, it's not like I'm not trying hard at all, but I work out the least amount. I don't do any HIIT whatsoever, high intensity interval training. And I lift the lightest weights ever, and yet I have the most fit body. So that's really what I'm passionate about now, is showing other women that they can do this too, that, you know, really the shapely body you want, the toned body, firm, smooth, tight skin, and best of all, that you can maintain it year round while eating well over 2,000 calories a day. You can go on vacations, you can go out to eat, you can have your drinks. You get to have an actual life and have a smoking hot body.
Mhm.
And the reason you have that great, firm, toned physique is because you also have a great metabolism. You have great hormones, because that's what happens when you eat enough and when you train to get strong to build muscle.
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so many things we need to talk about. Metabolism, the reverse diet, like eating more. And this is where women, their heads explode. And like even for me, right, working with you and your team. So you've like for the listeners, I'm eating, honestly, I'm going over my calories every day. I'm eating, 24, 2,500, trying to just hit those macros, like 220 grams of carbs and 150 grams of protein. And I took a screenshot of that graph in Trainer Eyes that shows you your weight. I took a screenshot from my best mate who has, she does this yo-yoing with her health. She doesn't like to exercise. She doesn't exercise. I'm working on it. She's interested. She actually wants to come and join me for a workout this weekend. So she's getting there. But I'm trying to tell her, you can live a life, because she loves to eat, but she'll deprive herself, right? Or she'll do more of a keto style. Like that's what people think they need is keto. So we got to get into these macros and how carbs build muscle. That's very important to chat about. But anyway, I sent her a screenshot of my weight since January, and she knows how much I'm eating, and her mind is blown. And not only have I not put any weight on, and we've got to talk about how it's not really about the weight so much, but I haven't put weight on. I actually have lost, not a lot, maybe a pound, and I'm just steady. So where I started, I'm eating so much more, but I've actually lost weight, and it's not, she's just like, what's going on? I need to know more about this, because it's such a more enjoyable way to live, obviously, but it does require, as Jill, Jill, she said, we were having a little chat and she was like, well, you got to put those carbs to work, right? So we're eating lots of carbs to build the muscle, but you can't eat like that if you're not putting those carbs to work. So let's talk. And I love how you spoke about skinny fat. I see that with my friends all the time. It's like, I just want to lose weight, but they have no concept of building muscle. And not only, like we were saying, that building muscle makes that smoking hot body, so you feel confident and you look good and you've got that changed body composition and you haven't got the wobbly arms and whatnot. But then you've got that muscle mass, which is an organ of longevity. And so now you have lower risk of diabetes, of cancer, of all these diseases, and a lower risk of ending up in a home or with a walker later in life. There's so many benefits to having muscle beyond looking good as well. But all these women are just like, I just want to lose weight. And they're skinny fat, not realizing their metabolic health. Doesn't matter how much you weigh, doesn't matter how big or small you are, your metabolic health can be in the toilet if you don't have muscle. So that's super important. Okay, let's get into this reverse diet. How on earth does somebody like me eat 2,500 odd calories a day, 220 grams of carbohydrates, and lose weight and not just stack on more and more weight? What is this reverse diet we speak of?
Okay, so a reverse diet is the inverse of a diet, because obviously, what is a diet? A diet is where you keep eating less and less and less because you are, quote unquote, trying to lose weight. Which, it's not the right way to do it, because you'll lose weight, well, assuming your body's so responsive and you haven't damaged it too much that it doesn't even respond, which definitely can happen. But you will lose weight, but a lot of the weight you're losing, pretty much like 50% of the weight you're losing, is muscle. So, and the muscle is what makes you toned. So this is why you will end up skinny fat and also be miserable and be hungry and yo-yo it all back. So what's a reverse diet? A reverse diet is where you are deliberately, intentionally, gradually eating a little bit more food bit by bit over time. And so there's a couple different kind of outcomes that can happen with a reverse diet. So the most ideal outcome, and this is pretty common, and it's what you're experiencing, which is great, is that your body adapts to the amount of food that you're eating and you start burning more calories 24/7 on autopilot. So the same way that when you diet and the reason that you even have to keep lowering your food, you have to keep cutting calories, is because your body adapts and it starts burning less calories, right?
Is that because set point? We have a set point, right? Is that a real thing, the set point?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, it's just that your body is trying to keep you alive. And so it's always kind of trying to be at a state of equilibrium. And so when your body realizes, like, okay, there's only this much food available, when you're getting into low calories, what it's going to do is it's going to say, okay, well, we don't have that much energy to work with, so we need to stop burning as many calories, which, by the way, is why you lose so much muscle, because muscle is calorically expensive for the body, which is why when you have more of it, you get to be a calorie burning machine and stay toned and lean and strong and healthy 24/7.
That's important. And that's important for women to understand.
Yes.
If you have more muscle on your body, then you are going to be burning more calories at rest than somebody who has decided to go the skinny fat route, hasn't got a lot of muscle, but is thin, but you here with all the muscle, that's why you can enjoy eating more, because you got that muscle, you're burning more calories.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. So the reverse diet, the intention really is to get your body adapted to burning a higher calorie intake, right? And, this is always, I try to explain this to people, like, why would you not want that? Like, wouldn't you rather be able to lose body fat eating 2,000 calories a day versus, trying to eat 1,000? And obviously that's very difficult to adhere to, have no energy. And
Yeah.
again, when you're eating that little, for sure you're not going to have any muscle because
So
you need to be
damaging.
that muscle. So you're just going to be skinny fat, slowing down your metabolism, which puts you in the position to yo-yo. And that's why yo-yo dieting is so common, is because every time you condition your body to eat so little and then you lose all this muscle, like your body's working less efficiently than it did before you did this crazy diet. So this is why when it comes to fat loss, you really need to be smart and strategic about it, which is what we do inside of our coaching, right? Is showing women the right way to do it by turning your body into a calorie burning machine by eating more food. And then to go with that is also actually learning to train to build muscle. So don't just randomly exercise. I mean, if you just care for your relative health, okay, that's great. But for optimum metabolic function and for optimum physique as well, and just strength, definitely learning how to train to stimulate your muscles for growth. That, because the more muscle you have, the faster your metabolism is going to be. And your metabolism is what's responsible for 70% of the calories you burn every single day. The calories you burn in your workout is only 5% of all the calories. So that's also so important to get away from this, like, oh, try to burn a bunch of calories in the workout. That should not be your goal at all. Yes, you are going to burn some calories working out, no matter what kind of workout you do, but it's really just going to be a couple hundred. And you know that you can eat a couple hundred calories very easily. So you're really just trying to win at a losing battle when that's the calorie in, calorie out focus. And instead, you need to think of it like building your body. I often relate it to like investing money, right? It's the same. It's like a long-term investment. You want your body to be working for you 24/7 around the clock without you actively even having to do anything additional. The same way that when you put money in an investment, it's like the money's working hard for you. So that's why the goal of your workouts, outside of, little fun things here and there, fine. But the main reason to be working out is to be building muscle. So it's not like your workouts is not the source of you to lose all this weight. It's more, you change it to, the goal of my workout is to put on muscle so that I'm going to become a 24/7 calorie burning machine and stay this way.
Yeah. And also for my listeners who are primarily midlife premenopausal women, not only is this very achievable, as we've spoken about, it is very achievable. It doesn't matter if you're in perimenopause, doesn't matter if you're in menopause. This not only is achievable, it's actually mandatory. If you care about your health and your longevity, it is absolutely mandatory. And as we get older, it's harder to build that muscle because we face that anabolic resistance, right? So it becomes even more important to do this in midlife and beyond. So for all the listeners out there who are, and the problem is, as we get older, a lot of people start to eat less protein and start to work out less. The opposite must happen if you care about not just how you look, but also how you feel and your longevity, right? So cool. So we're not working out to burn calories, which I've always looked at, when they tell you how many calories you've burned, and I've been like, are you kidding me? I feel like I burn a lot more than that. It's like a piddly amount. So we're not doing that. We're not working out to burn calories. We're working out to build the muscle so we can enjoy the food and then burn more calories at rest. So that's pretty fun. Okay, let's talk about macros a little bit. So I've talked a lot on this podcast about protein and how important protein is. So I think the listeners know we can talk about it for sure. That's very important to build muscle, right? I'm really intrigued about these carbs because that's relatively new to me. And so like we were saying before, we have to eat a lot of carbs. I'm going to let you explain all this. We don't want to be doing that if we're not putting them to work. That could be quite dangerous to be eating tons of carbs if you're not actually building muscle and working on that. But yeah, talk a little bit about carbs and why they're so important and why we have to eat so much.
Yes. Okay. So here's the thing. Everything that you ever hear that is low carb advice in the mainstream, right? is advice because the average person is sedentary, and the average person doesn't realize that what they actually want, they don't just want to be skinny fat, they want a toned body. Well, guess what a toned body is? It's a muscular body. So this is always how I preface it is carbs are not the problem. Your problem is not having muscle. And that's not just a physique problem, although, yeah, you're never going to have the physique you want unless you put on muscle. But as you're talking about, it's also for longevity, it's for your bone health. It's literally the fountain of youth. If you want to age well, you need muscle. And that's why these women who are like in their 50s who look so great are the ones who have muscle on their body, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that really helps you to reframe the whole story around carbs, because when you're coming from the perspective of, yes, okay, muscle gain is my goal, then it puts carbs into a whole new light. Because the reason that carbs are so important when it comes to building muscles, a couple reasons. Number one, carbs get converted into glycogen. So that's the energy form that they take on, and they get stored inside of your muscles. So when we, again, from an aesthetic point, when you want that like nice sculpted, everything's firm and hard and the lines and definition of my muscles look
Peachy bum,
full.
not the flat
Yeah.
bum that happens in midlife and beyond. The peachy
Oh
bum.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Whenever girls come to me and they're like, yeah, I want to build a bubble butt or I want to build my booty. I'm like, literally a booty looks like that, looks nice and popping and round and all that because it's filled with carbs.
Bobs. Yeah.
So they get stored inside of your muscles, which makes them pumped, which makes them look good. But it goes beyond that. It's that is where they get stored. And when you are training, when you are doing the workouts that you need to do in the first place to build muscle, because you need to train to build muscle. Yes, you need to eat the right way to build muscle. So it goes so hand in hand. And I was actually putting this in content today where you hear a lot, 80-20, like diet is 80% and exercise is only 20%. That again, that's more for people who are talking like just fat loss or weight loss. But when you're talking muscle gain, which is what you really want, it really is 50-50
Yeah.
because you can't eat your way to more muscle. You have to put a stimulus on your muscles for them to grow, which comes from your training. And then, yes, you obviously eat the right way to fuel it as well. So the glycogen goes in the muscles, makes them look nice and pumped and great. But that's also the quick access source of fuel for your training. So the amount of muscle you're going to be able to gain, which is number one, going to make you look really nice and toned. And number two, it's going to turn you into a calorie burning machine. The more muscle you can have, fast metabolism, all those things is dependent on how well can you do your workouts? How well can you perform? And you are not going to be able to push yourself that hard in your workout if you're barely eating, especially barely eating any carbs, because carbs is going to be the energy source that your body draws on as a quick quick access fuel to power you through those workouts, to stimulate your muscles for growth in the first place. Now, the other kind of big part to all of this is that all calories are made up of one of the three macros, right? We have protein, carbs, and fats. So protein will not get used as an energy source unless your body's kind of forced to because you were just not eating enough of the other two. The energy sources are carbs and fats. So protein is used as a building block of muscle, and that's why it's so important.
Yep.
But this is why you really shouldn't be overeating your protein. And, I always say the maximum amount of protein that a woman should be eating is really like 150 grams a day, maybe a little bit more than that. And trust me, that's plenty of protein. But so if you're capping, okay, 150 grams of protein, but to continue to put on muscle, to continue to grow, you need to be pushing your body into a little bit of a calorie surplus. Okay, so there's no reason to overeat protein because it doesn't get used as an energy source. So then you have the other two, fats and carbs. Okay, well, the problem with fat, although you can obviously condition your body to burn fat as the primary source of fuel, which is what this whole keto thing is about, it's not the preferential source of fuel, and it's a slow digesting source of fuel. It's not a quick digesting source of fuel the way that carbs is. Now, the last part about, okay, but couldn't you just eat a ton of fat? Well, fat from food will convert to fat on your body the most easily by far of the three macros. It just makes sense. Fat and food chemically, it's very similar to fat on your body. So it's literally for this reason that it's like, okay, eat enough protein, but don't overeat it. Same thing with fats. Eat enough fats because you need fats. Your hormones are made from fats, so you need them. But if you are eating too much fat, you're not really going to have adequate fuel to train, and you're going to just store too much fat. So that leaves us with carbs. And that is the reason why, and you'll know, anybody who's listening who has done their macros and has cycled through like phases of gaining and then phases of cutting down is going to know that carbs is the one macro that gets adjusted by far the most. Protein and fats don't change a whole lot. It's really that carbs go way up as you start to really, really, really gain muscle. And then they also go down quite a bit when you're deep in a fat loss phase. But even then, because you did things right and you got your calories nice and high to go into the fat loss phase, you're still going to be eating a lot of carbs, even when you're at the bitter end of a fat loss phase. But it's just going to be significantly less than when you're at like the peak of a muscle gain phase, when you're eating just an obscene amount of carbs, because you need so much fuel to put on the muscle with.
Okay, cool. We've got to talk about that, the cut and everything. Just a couple of questions. When should, it's funny, you know, you're talking about like fat will convert to fat in the body, because so much in my industry over the years, we've heard fat doesn't make you fat. And I've said that. But you know, there's all these paradigm shifts that I'm having working with your team, and it's quite interesting. So okay, all that makes sense. Now, when is there any particular time we should eat before working out? Like, when should we eat our protein? Carbs, should we eat before? Should we eat after? Are there any little tweaks we can do with the timing of our food with our workouts?
Yeah, so I always kind of explain to people, I'm like, okay, don't overthink it too much, but essentially you just want to, please do not work out fasted. Please, please, please. And I know that that's so common because like
very common.
So common. And the reason it's common is because the people who train fasted, the way they think of their workout is like, oh, just check off my workout and get on with my day. And like, just go in, you know, get a sweat, burn some calories, maybe stimulate my muscles a little bit. Very different perspective than the person who's going in and saying, my workout is the chance to maximize muscle growth. And if I'm going to maximize muscle growth, I need to be able to really push myself, like really stimulate my muscles for growth, which means I have to push myself hard. And again, like, I don't want to scare anyone away saying this isn't meaning like, oh, it's so hard that you're like, it takes 2 hours and you're dripping in sweat. I mean, if you've done CrossFit, you've done any of these things, honestly, the way to train to really maximize muscle growth is actually much easier than that. But
if I can do it, trust me, everyone else can do it. I just go down to the garage here. It's a very unsightly little setup we've got, but my husband has like the weight bench and stuff. And you know, I've probably got to get to a gym at some point, but honestly, I don't have the time right now. But I just take myself down to the garage, and you know, it takes me, I don't know, I reckon it takes me about 40 minutes to do a workout. And I do that for anyone listening. I do that with Meaghan's team, 40 minutes, 4 times a week. And the weights, in terms of the weight, like the heaviness, I think women can get a little intimidated by that, but your team helps with all of that, right? To sort of coach through. And anyway, I cut you off, sorry. But yeah, anyone listening, it's not scary. It's not, you know, you can do it in a relatively short amount of time. So it's very, very doable.
Yes. Yes. And we're really big too about, there's a time and a place to obviously kind of push with a little bit more weight in some of your lifts, but overall, really muscle building is about kind of making light weights feel like they're heavy. And that's more what I mean about pushing yourself to the max, and maximum intensity is really kind of pushing yourself to failure. So a lot of people, when they train, they see, oh, it says 8 to 12 reps. And so they get to the rep 12 and they're like, okay, I'm done. Well, if you're actually training to failure, it should be that rep 12 is like, that is, there's nothing more that you are literally failing on rep 12, failing meaning like you cannot do any more reps. But a lot of people get to rep 12 and they're like 10 reps shy of failure. So this is also, by the way, how you gauge how much weight you should be lifting. Because if you can do the exercise, you can do it nice, slow and controlled, full range of motion. And with the weight you're using, you get to rep 12 and you're like, don't feel gassed, don't feel your muscles absolutely screaming, begging you to stop. Then you need to push yourself more, right? Like you got to give your muscles a reason to grow. So even though the weight might not necessarily be that heavy, you're really lifting it well. You are pushing your
Slowly.
muscles.
It's slow,
Slow,
right? Time under
controlled.
tension is what I think you say.
Yes, time under tension. Yeah, which is more like slow, controlled reps, full range of motion, good muscle mind connection, meaning, you're really actively engaging with the muscle that you want to hit.
Yeah.
Anyways, okay, so back to timing with
Food.
food. So please don't train fasted because you need fuel to push yourself properly to really gain the muscle. And yeah, your body's going to be depleted because you just slept 8 hours, right? Now you're going to train. So you need food, and especially you need carbs before you go train. If you're one of these women who trains like very first thing in the morning, I always tell my clients, like, try to get at least 300 calories worth of food. So like some sort of snack and, carbs mainly, but mixed with, a little bit of fat, a little bit of protein, or both. So even like rice cakes with peanut butter and jam and a banana, like I just ate that today. It can be like eggs and toast. It can be a bagel with peanut butter, with butter, just something. Get something in your body so that you have that quick access fuel. Okay, now if you don't train right very first thing in the morning, you train a little bit later in the day, then the kind of easiest way to think of it is that within one, maybe absolute maximum 2 hours before you go to the gym, that you would have eaten like an actual meal. And so an actual meal is probably, at least around 500 calories, maybe give or take a little bit. And that there's some sort of protein, carb, fat, fiber. So fiber is like fruits or vegetables present, right? So again, this can be like a bowl of protein oats, or it can be the eggs and toast, or it can be like a chicken sandwich, whatever. It doesn't really matter, just something from each of those categories so that you have food in your body to go train. And the most important thing to have in your body is carbs, because again, that's going to be the fuel for your training. And then after you train, you just kind of naturally should get hungry within that hour maximum, I'd say, because obviously, especially in this, you pushed yourself hard when you're getting really hungry afterwards because you depleted your glycogen source. So that's why it's really important to now go eat more carbs to replenish those glycogen stores, and also get in your protein because you tore your muscle fibers. So if you want your muscles to grow back bigger and stronger, you also need the protein, right? But again, I just say, like, just eat a meal after you work out, and it's going to have enough of what you need.
Awesome. Awesome. Super helpful. Amazing. So why don't we just quickly touch on this, the method between, so we've talked about eating lots and eating carbs and building muscle, but then you have this cut phase, which I've not come to yet. So tell the listeners a little bit about, we do the build up, but then we do the cut. What's that
about? Okay. So obviously most people have fat loss goals. And most people also think that it's only fat loss, that if they just lost fat, they would be so happy with their physique. And they would in some ways, because you'd be smaller.
Maybe in clothes, maybe not in a bathing suit, like again, if you've got like the wobbly arms or you haven't got a flat butt, no one really wants that. So yeah.
So that's where it's important to realize it's not just fat loss, it's also the muscle gain.
Yeah.
That's really going to give you the shape you want, but also realizing that muscle gain is really the secret to lasting sustainable fat loss, because again, it's what's going to keep your metabolism fast. And that's the thing that's working for you 24/7. So you can keep the fat off, right? While actually eating a real amount of food. In fact, a lot of food. Okay. So since people do have fat loss goals, technically speaking, in order to lose fat, you actually have to be in a calorie deficit, right? We hear this all the time. Oh, fat loss requires a calorie deficit. Yes, that's true, because fat, what it is excess backup fuel on your body, emergency fuel from, because that's how our bodies evolved.
Yep.
So in order to get rid of it, you have to force your body to use it as kind of the in-between, because it's like, okay, your body's burning 2,000 calories, but you're only eating 1,700. So the 300 for that day is going to come from a little bit of your fat stores, right? Now, the problem, and this drives me insane in this industry, is that we always hear, oh, calorie deficit is what you need for fat loss. But what we don't hear almost ever is, are you actually in a good position to go into a calorie deficit? Because in order to go into a calorie deficit and actually be able to lose a significant amount of fat, so, let's say like 10 to 20 pounds in one cut of fat loss, you're going to need room to drop your calories. Okay. I always tell people, like, you want around 700 calories that you can drop from your intake and still be eating enough food, not be miserable, not be losing muscle, not be tanking your hormones. Okay. So now here's the problem. Most women, and this obviously depends, but a lot of women are eating less than 1,500 calories a day consistently. I mean,
Oh,
I see this all.
I'm eating like between 23 and 2,500, and I am not stuffed. There are times when I'm like, oh my goodness, I've eaten everything, but I could eat some more. So 1,500 sounds miserable.
But it's so normal. And like, I see this, I'd say
Yeah.
probably 2 out of every 3 clients, honestly, that come into the program are 1,500 or less.
Oh, yeah.
I honestly see some that are like 1,300, 1,100,
Oh,
1,000.
absolutely. I've seen it too. And you know who I see it in primarily? I don't know if you do, but I see it primarily in women who actually do have weight to lose. They should for their health. They're overweight, but they're
Mhm.
eating. I've seen 400, 600, 800, like crazy numbers. And these ladies
Yeah.
are overweight. So they've,
Mhm.
I guess, I don't want to, put words in your mouth, but they kind of busted their metabolism.
Yeah, it's a lot of reasons. I mean, for sure, I've seen that a lot with women who have a significant amount of fat to lose, who are really under eating. And usually the people become really overweight like that because they kind of just don't eat and then they binge eat. So that's how you end up getting really overweight like that. And then yeah, you're just like, you're not really eating. You're messing with your hormones for that reason. You're not getting the hunger cues until it's like you go the whole day without eating, and then it's like late at night, you just like eat everything in sight kind of thing, right? So anyways, I've seen it with everybody, whether they were like skinny, more like skinny fat, because they usually don't have, you're not going to have much muscle if that's all you're eating, versus, relative amount of body fat to lose, if not a significant amount of body fat to lose, eating not enough. And even, sometimes it's like, okay, you're eating 1,600, 1,700 is a little bit better, but still that is not enough. So I always say that really minimum intake to even consider going into a fat loss phase where you're going to drop your calories is you need to be eating 2,000 calories a day consistently, not just, oh, I ate 2,000 one day and then I went back to eating 1,300. No, you have to get your body adapted to 2,000 calories a day. Now, this is going to really serve you for your fat loss phase for so many reasons. Because another big thing, because so many women, they're so keen, like, oh, they just want to rush into a cut because they want to lose fat. And I always have to explain, your cut is going to be as successful as the reverse you did to get into it, right? Like the prep that you did for this fat loss phase is what is going to determine the success of the fat loss phase, because your body's going to be burning as many calories as you've conditioned it to burn. So if you're only eating 1,500, that's a lot less than if you condition your body to be eating 2,500 like you are. And by the way, I work up a lot of our clients to 2,500 calories a day before I get them into a cut, because then I think, great, even if at the bitter end of this cut, I dropped you 1,000, you'd still be at 1,500, which obviously I don't want you eating that way all the time, but at the very end of a fat loss phase, that is acceptable before we increase your intake once again. However, I've actually never had to drop a client that low. Usually the lowest I ever drop somebody is like 1,700 at the very, very, very end of a cut for maybe a couple of weeks before we get back up to well over 2,000 calories. So that's really the reason for reverse/cut is, number one, you want to condition your metabolism to be working well to have a more successful fat loss phase. The other big thing is, again, that you want a muscular physique. Even if when I say that, you hear that, you think, no, you don't, you actually do. You want a toned body, that's a muscular body. So you need to be eating enough to put on muscle. And then the other thing is, and this is kind of, it sounds like what you're experiencing, is a lot of people don't realize like you can have fat loss happen without necessarily cutting, because what's going to happen is your metabolism will speed up in the reverse. And this doesn't necessarily happen with everyone, but it's very possible that it will. And this is why you have to be tracking your data, right? And this is what we do in coaching. We really evaluate everything. So we need to know, how does your body respond?
Yeah.
And so a lot of the time, as you're eating more and you're getting your body conditioned to more food, your metabolism is speeding up. And so because of that, you're actually seeing fat loss happen. And also because you are training to put on muscle, which is also helping you lose fat. So a lot of the time you can lose a good bit of fat just by getting your macros correct.
Eating more.
Right, eating more, getting your
Right.
macros correct, and strength training. I see this happen all the time with clients. So many of my great client transformations, I've never even had to take them into a cut yet. They've just been able to achieve these results just by reversing.
Yeah.
Now, usually, obviously, if you have a good bit of fat to lose, then you would still, it's still very possible for you to see some good progress in a reverse. But at some point, you're probably going to have to go into a cut. So then that brings us to kind of like the final reason of why to do this reverse before cutting, is so that you're going to have room to drop your calories and for it to actually be sustainable. Because when we're going to go into a cut phase, you know, this is going to be somewhere between 4 to 6 months, potentially a little bit less, potentially a little bit longer. It really depends on how much fat you have to lose, and also how much room you have to drop your calories. And then just how you're feeling. Like, are you getting tired of it? Do you want to stop? But it's, and this is where like so many women, they just don't get it. They think like, no, I just want to lose a bunch of weight or a bunch of fat right now. But the way that you're going about it is going to be so short-lived, and you're just going to end up yo-yoing, right? So this is why definitely, you know, when you do things the right way, you have to kind of have a little bit more of this, like, okay, slow and steady approach. But the difference is that you get to keep the results. You get a permanent transformation, which is again why I compare it to investing your money in the stock market. Like when you're first investing your money, at first, it's like, okay, you're only making back a little bit, but over time, you're making back a lot. And then it's like, that's just your money to keep now. This is the same with building your body. So you really got to get away from this quick fix and realize that, no, this is a long-term transformation. And that being said, you can, and this happens with our clients all the time, like you can and will still see changes in your body happening quite quickly, you know, within the first couple weeks, even first 2 months. But this idea that you can just lose so much fat, like really, really fast when you barely eat right now. No, that's not the case. You need to lay the foundations, but then you're going to have a permanent transformation. So it's worth it.
Amazing. And so, yeah, consistency, patience is key in anything that's, you know, there's no quick fixes. Everyone keeps trying to find them, but they never work. And so last final question. So do women have to then, you say that this is a forever thing, you lay the foundation and then it's a forever thing. But my question, because you know me, we'll be honest, I'm not a fan of the macro counting. I'm doing the best I can. And I think for me, I'm doing pretty well. But, you know, I can find it a little bit sometimes challenging, and I don't always want to be tracking everything forever. But I'm trying to gauge, like, obviously for you, you're always going to be doing the builds and the cuts and the builds and the cuts, and that's your life. That's what you do. What about for someone like me? How long do I have to say work with you guys? And I might want to work with you forever, because I definitely need your skills with how to lift and the exercises and all that. Like I was doing the bare basic, you know, triceps and biceps. I didn't know what I was doing. So that's something that I'll always need some support with. But I guess my question is there a continuous, you know, build, cut, build, cut? Is that the idea, to do that forever?
No, that's really only for people who love it.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, people who love it like me, and obviously I'm laughing because it's like, obviously sometimes I'm like, ugh, but like overall, I love the
Sure.
game and
That's what you
the art.
do.
Yeah, like because it's a sport really, and it's also an art, which is bodybuilding, right? Like literally building your body, you get to be the sculptor of your own body. So this whole like constantly kind of like, okay, go into muscle gain phase and cut, muscle gain phase and cut. That's just for people who are like really trying to maximize their physique,
Sure.
right? And yes, obviously, okay, if you have a good bit of fat to lose, then yeah, you're going to need to do this. And to kind of get to a point where you have this kind of more or less like ideal physique of like, okay, you're lean, you're toned, you are going to have to go through a little bit of reversing cut, all of that, whatever, to get to that point. Exactly how long it's going to take for you, I mean, it really depends on your starting point. It also really depends on how adherent you are. Because yeah, if you're kind of like, oh, I sort of do it, but not really, then okay, you can't really expect
Yeah,
great
the best
results.
results.
Right. So, but you know, I always say, like, to clients coming into the program, I always tell them, like, give me a year.
Yeah.
And this is not because it's going to take a year for you to see any results. Definitely not. As I say, you know, a lot of our clients see results even within the first couple of weeks, and definitely kind of that like month 2, month 3, the results start to become significant. And so our program to start at 6 months. And so that's why I'd say, you know, like, give me at least 6 months for us to really kind of make a dent in your fat loss and muscle gain. But just to kind of paint the picture, you know, it's better to think more like a year, and just to have that more long term of like, because muscle gain doesn't happen overnight. The advantage, by the way, if you've never really gained muscle before, is that you can gain a lot really fast in the beginning because your body is new to it. It's called newbie gains, where when you're brand new to strength, good quality strength training, that your body can actually put on muscle quite quickly. So that part of it is very motivating. And then once you get to the point where you already are fairly muscular, it really kind of slows down how much you can gain.
Sure.
So yeah, like, going in thinking, okay, something like 6 to 12 months to really get a significant transformation, really get this like nice toned body. And then, yeah, then it's pretty easy to maintain,
And you know
because
too what you're eating, like you get an idea of how to eat then, I would assume, for the rest of your life. And you get an idea of where to cut to if you want to lose a little bit of weight, if you've fallen off the wagon a bit. You're learning all this in those 12 months.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, and even just, I just re-entered a muscle building phase with my coach, but last year in 2023, I did 6 months building, 6 months cutting, had a huge transformation. And then because of that, like, I was just so happy with my physique. I told my coach, because she kind of wanted to push me back into building more muscle again, which I get why. But I just kind of coasted for 3 months. I was like, you know what? And I was actually really amazed how easily I was able to maintain eating a lot, like going up 600 calories from the end of my cut, which just goes to show how effective a reverse is. And yeah, so it really made me realize, like, okay, you really can maintain quite easily, because by that point, you're going to really understand what it is that your body needs to be fed. You're going to understand more or less how to get the right ratios. And obviously, yeah, that you are consistent, you're still continuing to lift. Obviously, you know, you miss a little bit here and there, it's not a big deal, but it's, of course, if you just stop working out, well, yeah, eventually that's going to have an impact. But probably by this point, you just love lifting. You want to keep anyways, especially because for the, not only, yeah, you look great, you're strong, everything, but honestly, for me, it's like the mental health benefit of it. And when I really miss the gym when I am not, like, let's say I miss a week or something, like, I can't wait to get back, because I love the high, the endorphins I get from it. So yes, you definitely can get to a point where you're just maintaining. And then at some point, and so this is kind of just what I always say to people, is that at some point you might start to feel like, you know, I actually would like to put on a little bit more muscle again, or I would like to cut a little bit of fat. And even then, like, you don't necessarily have to track. It's up to you. You can kind of just like eat well, eat high protein, get your step count up, like whatever, you know, to lose fat. But I always just say, I'm like, listen, if you're in a position where you want to see physique changes, tracking macros is just going to guarantee that it happens the fastest way possible, because you're going to have actual data, and you're going to know for sure that you are eating the right amount to guarantee that you see those changes, as opposed to just kind of like, oh, I'm eating healthy, sort of. So that's what I'll just say, is like, you can maintain your results quite easily, but if you get to a point where you're like, I do want a little bit of a physique change again, that's when you can go back to the more dialed in. But again, and then just do it for a period of time and maintain again with more intuitive.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. So that was amazing. Thank you so much. Why don't you tell the listeners where they can find you and a little bit about your program?
Yes, absolutely. So I am on Instagram, Meaghan_nomadic fitness. Nomadic fitness is the company. I'm also on YouTube under Nomadic Fitness. And we have a great free guide on nomadicfitness.com/free guide, which actually has workouts, has sample meal plans, has videos about how to track macros, how to set your macros. So that's a great starting point if you're just not sure where to begin with all of this. So definitely come check me out in any of those places. I'm always making content. And as far as our actual coaching program, of course, as I said in this podcast, that I just think if you really just want to get results as fast as possible, as good results as possible, that's where actually working with a one-to-one expert who can create something custom for you and can continue to adapt and revise your program based on your unique body and how your body's responding. And also just, support you through the process, encourage you through the process, keep you accountable, make you actually invested in it so you actually do it. That's where our one-to-one coaching comes into play. So I always explain that it's a one-stop shop for everything. It really is the same as having a in-person personal trainer. Obviously, it's online instead of in person, but I can't tell you the amount of clients we've had who literally did have in-person personal trainers for many years.
Yeah.
And constantly say, with just 1 month, 2 months in your program, I got way better results than I ever did with years with an in-person trainer. And the reason why it's the same, just not being there in person, is because we get you to send in form videos all the time because we want to make sure that you are really learning how to lift weights well. Because like I said in this podcast, it's not just going through the motions. You need to maximize the tension on the muscle. So we really just fast track that for you instead of you guessing and trying to figure it out on your own for so long. So we give you that support, obviously everything you need to know with nutrition, macros, customizing your macros, taking you through these different phases, reversing, cutting, building muscle, and just being there to answer all your questions, encourage you through the process and keep you sane. Because when you try to do this on your own, it's very easy to get in your head versus when you have somebody who can be the objective voice of reason, who can objectively look at the data. It's very different because we get really emotional about our own bodies, but a coach will know, okay, this is what to expect in this process. And this is normal. You're doing it right. Keep going. And that actually makes you keep going and then getting the results. So if you're interested, that's nomadicfitness.com/coaching. You can see all our testimonials there, see the whole process, see what the program includes, and definitely you can apply if you feel called to it. We would love to have you in there.
Yay. And of course, I will put all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much, Meaghan. It was so fun talking to you. And I know that women are going to learn so much from this episode. So I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much, Tara. It was so nice. And I hope that this was helpful to all the listeners. And I look forward to hearing from some of you soon.
Yay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
I am not a medical professional, and the information provided in this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. I do not have access to your individual medical history or circumstances, so the content discussed here should not be considered as medical advice. Before making any changes to your diet, lifestyle, or considering the use of supplements, please consult with a qualified healthcare professional or your doctor to ensure it's safe and appropriate for your specific situation. Any decisions you make based on the content of this podcast are at your own discretion and risk. Thank you for tuning in.